Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video, and today we're discussing Fairview's Pegleg Carignan 2020. The Pegleg Carignan is made from South Africa's very oldest block of Carignan and was named after Cobus Basson. Now the Basson family still own the block, but poor Cobus once lost a leg when a tractor overturned during harvest and fell on his leg. But apparently, because good old Cobus was always very good-natured, and his nickname was Houtbeen, it seems that immortalizing his disability on the wine label is all fair game. Now, the Basson farm is located on the Swartland side of the Paardeberg. And as I said, this is the very first block of Carignan ever to be planted in South Africa. Planted in 1981, which was, coincidentally, the same year that IBM released its first personal computer, which meant it was also the same year that Microsoft released its very first operating system, MS-DOS. Now you might say, heck, Han, how much can we really trust Carignan from South Africa if they've only had it since 1981? Well, it may give you some comfort to know that South Africa has had Carignan a hell of a lot longer than it's had computers, that's for sure. And your next question might be, well, Han, if Carignan has only been hanging in South Africa since 1981. Where on earth was it before then? And you'd be forgiven for thinking that the answer was in fact France, because in France it has had both shame and widespread fame at various times in the history. In fact, there was one point, because Carignan can produce so much fruit, it produced what is called a wine lake effect in France, where there was just countless Carignan vines and it produced masses and masses and masses of very mediocre wine that the country couldn't even give away if they tried. The same sort of thing happened actually with Cinsault in South Africa in the middle of the last century, just masses and masses of Cinsault that they didn't know what to do with. But in South Africa, a few decades later, farmers started taking Cinsault seriously. And the same thing has happened with Carignan in France, so that now Carignan is not just a great blending component, but is in fact the star player in not just a few red blends from the south of France. Closer to home, one of South Africa's most internationally recognized brands, Paardeberg, has recently released a fairly premium red blend called the Motorcycle Marvel, that in fact chooses Carignan as the lead singer and allows Shiraz, Grenache and Mourvedre to act as some sort of supporting role. But for all the Venus gossip about Carignan's fame or shame in France or South Africa, ampelographers will tell us that the grape actually comes from the northwest part of Spain. Now, unlike Tempranillo, where the theory is currently that the Phoenicians brought it along all the way across the top of Africa and up into Spain and Portugal, this is not the case with Carignan. In fact, it has been tracked back to, as I said, the northwest part of Spain, and the fact that it is so widely found around the entire country of Spain leads them to believe that it is probably one of the oldest indigenous cultivars to be found in Spain.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
You might ask, I just want to know what this wine tastes like. Now, as we said before, because Carignan can often overfruit or just produce super large amounts of fruit, the end result can often be diluted and not very remarkable. But this is a wine that, like Fairview's wine in general, can keep one guessing. Because this wine is made from old vines, the yields are way down. So instead of getting a dilute, characterless Carignan, we have instead a rather intense rendition of the grape. The aromas, as I've said with old vine wines, often take a while to emerge, but they definitely are worth getting to grips with. So don't be afraid to stick your nose deep into the glass and also to give it some time in the glass. What you end up with is the amazing combination of chalk and leather and even a kind of dried oreganum, and then some sweeter elements of plum fruit and even a pop of wild flowers, or I guess maybe even dried wild flowers or potpourri. And then right at the back, there is a tiny, really quite subtle hint of cedar, I guess, hinting at the fact that this wine does in fact get matured in French oak for 11 months. And the palate is every bit as engaging as the nose. There's amazing concentration and texture. It manages to be both quite brooding, but also full of super high-toned red cherry, cranberry, raspberry, pomegranate. The acidity on this is quite juicy indeed. But rather than just being about sweet red berries, there's quite a prominent savory element that it has a tomato note to it. And then on the other side, in between the savory and the high, bright, juicy red cherry, there's also a supporting note of slightly darker fruit, some black cherry and maybe a little black plum. It's quite complex. Possibly the acidity can be for some a little lean or a little taut. This is, again, can be remedied by warming the serving temperature ever so slightly, or in my experience, just leaving it in the glass for a little bit, where those extra elements open up and the complexity yields a slightly more balanced result than you might get straight out of the bottle. And while I'm not a big fan of talking about wines being food wines as if they somehow depend on food for them to taste good, I was fascinated at how the fruit components could be massively amplified in this wine by serving it with a strong, salty, mature cheddar. But I guess I could spend all night talking about chalky tannins, cherry stones, or plum skins, and all the amazing texture in this wine. But rather than me doing that, why don't you crack this bottle and leave a review in the review section below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel so that you can keep up to date with more videos on old vines, niche cultivars, exciting new winemakers, and some prominent regions in the South African winelands.